last time we spoke, you and I both kind of had a moment where we both acknowledged that as Caucasian males, the summer of 2020, if you will, really opened our eyes to issues as a former hospital CEO and a current hospital CEO, to the fact that we needed to engage in this conversation much more than we'd ever realized before. And it really impressed me and moved me that you acknowledged that so wholeheartedly. Can you just take the listeners back to that if they weren't there to hear that conversation? Can you just share with us briefly what happened that you just decided, hey, we need to engage more in this and we need to start this process?
Well, if you look at 2020 as being maybe one of the most difficult years in our lives, and in many lives that came before us, there was a lot that occurred beyond the pandemic that I believe allowed us to start connecting the dots to what is just horrific in our society, in the mistreatment, the violence, and the discrimination that occurs out there. And I think many of us had a sense that this was going on, but didn't really grasp it in the way that we should as human beings, especially as we look at some of the murders that occurred right before our eyes. George Floyd is the one that really woke me up, as well as many others that came after him. Now, when we think about what we do here at Providence, our mission is to be focused on the healing ministry of Jesus. And the healing ministry of Jesus is very focused on not only getting people well and being compassionate, but about being inclusive. And when I look back in my life, and I think about, I'm Jewish, but I think about my ancestors who were annihilated in Nazi Germany and the commitment I made as a young child and then beyond to make sure I never would allow that to happen again. It's happening. And so I have a very personal commitment, along with Azizza and my other colleagues, to make sure that we change our world. And I am not going to let one day pass without an effort towards that end.
Thank you for sharing that. Azizza, you mentioned, in addition to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Committee, you mentioned specifically the Black Caregivers Council within the organization. Can you address each of those? Was the Black Caregivers organization already in existence, and how did those efforts differ from what you are now doing with the DEI?
So I think that's a really great question. The Black Caregiver Resource Group came first. A few of our colleagues who are Black African American, we all, had a meeting and decided, hey, we need to make a change. What can we do? And so we approached Erik with this idea of starting this caregiver resource group. And he was extremely receptive in our meeting. We presented some ideas on what we thought would really help push initiatives forward, not only in our community, but within our Providence family, right? And so in that meeting, he had asked for a larger call. He was like, this is so important. I want to continue this work for the BCRG. But in addition, I think there's also this diversity, equity, and inclusion issue that also needs to be addressed as well. And so to make sure that we covered everything, all the Black Caregiver Resource Group caregivers are also in the Diversity and Inclusion Council with a range of other ethnicities, gender, job titles, pay, class, everything. So just making sure that we touch all aspects of all of it. In the BCRG, I think we really focus on the Black community, our Black caregivers. In the Diversity and Inclusion Council, we focus on a discrimination-free environment, diversifying caregivers in leadership, making sure that the leaders at the top look like all of our caregivers, right? And drive policy, learning opportunities, and cultural competency, making sure that everyone is aware of all the differences. One of the things that I see really often right now in our Providence community, sorry, I call it family, is the pronouns, right? That's a huge deal too. Talking about his and her and they and their and them and all of that. So I think it's all encompassing and it's very, very interesting work.
So for a company like Providence that was founded by females, and here we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, are the gender equity efforts also, Erik, part of this same discussion, or are there separate committees addressing those topics?
No, it's all included. The Diversity and Inclusion Council is creating equality among all of us and creating opportunity in a very deliberate manner. You know, I believe that for many years we have hoped for there to be more diversity among our leadership team, for example, so that our leadership team looks like the communities that we serve. Hope's not an option any longer. We've got to be, you know, deliberate in helping our colleagues advance in the organization and mentoring in a way that helps to achieve the goals and objectives of our colleagues, our community, in a way that makes our leadership team look more like the community, so we can also be more responsive to the community.